thank you and John Carpenter, Deborah Hill, because if it wasn't for you and many others making these films, there would be no Midnight Madness program.
Yeah, far out. Exactly.
I usually welcome people to Midnight Madness, but you are Midnight Madness.
I like that. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, it's Robert Mitchell, and I'm here at the 2019 Toronto International Film Festival, and I'm here with Matthew Rankin, whose film premieres in only mere hours here at the Midnight Madness section. And I guess the question is, my first one would be, how are you feeling right now in anticipation?
I feel nerve-wracked and very excited, and you know, I think I'm e-talk ready.
Nice. So, William Lyon Mackenzie King. For those people not from Canada or those that may fell asleep during that 5 minutes in history class, what was it about this Prime Minister that you're like, I am telling this story about this man, and what connected you to his story?
Yeah, well, he kept a diary, right? He was like a compulsive diarist from like 1893 till 3 days before his death in 1950. He wrote in this journal. And the journal is full of like shame and these sort of like maudlin outpourings and a lot of, you know, Napoleonic, vainglorious pronouncements. And while I was reading it as a younger person, I felt like I was reading my own diary. I am also a compulsive diarist, and diaries, as you know, for anyone who keeps a diary, they know that what you write in there is really melodramatic. So that was sort of the embryo of the thing. I wanted to sort of structure a melodrama out of this material.
And Timothy Snyder, historian, has said that, you know, history doesn't actually repeat, but it does have patterns. And I know that you studied history, and a lot of your stuff's rooted, like the Tesla short film you did recently. What is it about history that kind of infuses your art and is like a beginning for you to create something?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. I feel like it's to a very large extent, it's our interests that choose us rather than the reverse. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a lot like when you fall in love with somebody, you feel connected to that person, you feel attracted to them, you feel you understand them and they understand you, and you want to procreate with them. And it's the same with me. I want to procreate with Mackenzie King.
That's perfect, you know. So, and then we're going to see this visually for what, 90 minutes or so?
That's right. It's a 90-minute procreation scene with Mackenzie King.
There's you have a lot of animation in this film. Can you talk about the process of how you create this?
Yeah, it was all built on this. It was all done on this Lotte Reiniger silhouette rig that I built. So it's 3 planes of glass lit from below, and I move around little bits of black paper and translucent vellum and things like this, and it creates this sort of glass painting type effect. So it's all like analog animation done on actual motion picture celluloid, and yeah, very, very little digital intervention.
Is this how you always envisioned it, or when you like started the process of crafting the animation just took on a life of its own, or is it like kind of like how you pictured it initially? Yeah,
I really like things to feel like they're made by hand, with all the imperfection that can come with that. I'm an analog guy, you know, like I don't really understand computers. Some of my best friends are computers, but I don't really make films with them, you know. Yeah.
And your own Canadian story. You were in Winnipeg and in Montreal, and of course Winnipeg. You think of a filmmaker, Guy Maddin, in My Winnipeg, and I learned that you would work on some of his films. Is there anything that you learned while working on his films that you've taken, you know, that lesson and applied it to what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I worked in sort of a little low-level, you know, sort of subhuman capacity on Guy's sets. Guy is, of course, a wonderful person and a great mentor to Winnipeg filmmakers. We all owe a debt to Guy. And I would say my biggest debt to Guy, and there are many, but one thing I learned the most from Guy is how to work on an epic scale with a Dollarama budget. You know, a lot of times we deal with that challenge by putting everything into one room with only like 2 actors and no decor and stuff like that, and then the money can kind of go further. But Guy has made an aesthetic virtue of this very, you know, low budget kind of aesthetic that really gets into mischief with artifice. And so that is a strategy I'm definitely putting to work here.
Well, and your film, as you said, it's not two people in a room. Your film looks ambitious. You know, what was that journey like from the initial idea to, you know, getting some financing for it and actually putting this thing in motion? Can you talk a little bit about that process and how long that took?
Yeah, you know, it's a very bland administrative process. I wrote a script, and then, you know, I started submitting it to institutions, and then you know, they had some thoughts, and then I submitted again, and then you know, we ended up making it. So it was kind of like that. It's like almost bureaucratic. It's the only answer I can give you.
Canadian bureaucracy.
That's right. But
do you think it helped the film?
What, the bureaucracy?
The grant process and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the arts councils were like initially really supportive, and that's really great. And then, you know, larger institutions came on, and it's just wonderful. You know, like we have an urgent need to support emerging creativity, right? Or else our culture will just atrophy. So it's really precious. These institutions are things we have to protect.
Well, you have, like, obviously, with Canadian film, there's a neighbor only not too many miles to the south, and you're constantly dealing with that Hollywood machine. So to get Canadian stories out there, that's its own feat.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I work in Quebec, right? And I feel like Quebecers have had this sort of honesty to really go into really local subjects and go deep with them. And I think when you do that, you know, you can get at something universal. You know, I feel like in English kind of we hesitate about that. But Quebec, they really go for it, and I think that's why Quebec has become one of the great, you know, cinematic cultures of the world. And that is the pleasure of watching a movie, is to enter another world that you don't know about, right, and discover it and be in there. So yeah, I think maybe Quebec nationalism was sort of had an influence on me.
That's amazing, especially coming from like Winnipeg and now living in Montreal, and to be able to infuse these different ideas and cultures and everything is amazing. So you go through this artistic process with this film. It's much bigger and more ambitious than some of the short films you've been working on. How do you feel you've grown as an artist, taking on this endeavor and this passion and creating this work of art?
How have I grown as an artist? Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I made all of my films sort of, you know, all my shorts were all made in this kind of like underworld of independent, low-budget, subhuman kind of in the trenches filmmaking, right? And this one, you know, I was working with some really great producers and in Quebec, and you know, they do things properly there. They really do. You know, like they're not uneducated heathens like myself. So it was a bit of a learning curve. I had to, you know, it was one of those things like, you know, like in making a short, I would just sort of shoot until I have all my shots. But on this, it was like, well, you know, it's you have 30 seconds to finish your day, so, you know, choose wisely. So anyway, I had to figure that out. But thankfully, I was surrounded by people who know what they're doing. So it was good.
Yeah, it was a great environment to be doing this in.
Yeah. 100%.
My final question would be, tonight, the film premieres, obviously. What kind of cinematic journey is this audience going to be in for, and what do you hope people take from this film?
Yeah, I hope, well, I mean, it's wonderful to show it here in Toronto, because it takes place in Toronto, right? And so, you know, the Toronto people will have the experience of recognizing themselves, but also seeing a very abstracted version of themselves, which I hope will challenge and perhaps make them uncomfortable, and I think also will be really fun.